I've been making agentic workflows for 3 weeks, but I've been making automations, especially with AI, for 3 years. So considering everything that we know right now, it's stupid to assume that one doesn't have some of the same issues as the other. So in this video, what I'm going to do is talk about some of the common pitfalls when making agentic workflows. This is going to be super quick and it's going to be based on my current findings. It's also going to be based on some of the stuff that I just know based on first principles about how AI is going to work when you use it to do specific things. The big issue, which has always been the case when it came to using AI in general, was a lack of determinism. If you wanted, for example, in a specific automation to create something that went, let's say, from Airtable over to, let's say, so you wanted to, let's say we're going to just do like a search records in Airtable. Search records in Airtable. And then from there, you wanted to run the records through, let's say, OpenRouter. And then that would give you structured outputs, which you would feed into specific Slack channels. If you go in and you have this OpenRouter step not spit out a structured output, then this step fails automatically. So if this has like a 10% issue, then this comes out crap and this comes out even worse. So that's just what happens when you use AI in a way that doesn't make a lot of sense. Another example, if you were to use, let's say, instead of a structured output, we're going to use the same search records in Airtable, and then we're going to run the records again through OpenRouter. Let's say we're grabbing a transcript that landed inside of Airtable. Once that transcript lands inside of Airtable, we run the record through OpenRouter. After we run the record through OpenRouter, to summarize the contents, we then run the records through OpenRouter to create action items for our team. And then we summarize further, and then we dump it in. If we take all of these steps and then we dump the findings in Slack, another problem that will occur is called compounding. If this is off by 10%, let's say the summarization missed out a tiny bit of information. If this was off by a little bit, then, and let's say that the action items are going to be a little bit off even further. If you summarize even further, let's say you wanted to get like a TLDR, that's going to be even worse. And then the Slack steps just not going to give you the right information. So you have two big issues here when it comes to using AI in general based on first principles. And the first one is how if you need strict structure, sometimes it will fail. And if it fails at 10%, then you have a 90% success rate on something that could be as important as setting up a subscription for a client. If you're out in any way, shape or form when it comes to setting up a subscription and you're relying on AI in some sort of way, shape or form, you're going to ruin a client engagement straight up. No one wants to work with someone who charges 10K up front, who then unfortunately accidentally forgot to change the dollar amount to pence and then ended up charging $1 million instead. No, don't be that guy. Don't have that happen. And then number two is compounding issues. So where you have the problems where one prompt isn't doing what it needs to do as effectively as it should, and then the next prompt is a tiny bit out, and then the next prompt after that is a tiny bit out, you now have nonsense coming out of the end of it. So here are the common pitfalls that I've found when it comes to using agentic workflows just in general, and they follow a lot of the same rules, but they aren't the exact same problem that you will find when running with this, because there are some more things insofar as how you actually generate them. So the first one is not defining success. Not defining success is the dumbest thing that you can do with any agent. I'm going to show you what I actually do whenever I make some of these prompts. Hold on, do I have an example in front of me? Let me go and find one. Here we go. So this is the one that I actually used for the website scraper that I have inside of my cursor that I showed in one of the first videos that I did on agentic workflows. This is how I've been writing them so far. Website scraper.md. Goal: bulk scrape the contents of a website to answer specific questions such that the user can confirm that he is actually reaching out to the right businesses via cold email based on his goals. Definition of success: Companies meet chosen criteria with a simple true false. The criteria is stored in the CSV in a separate column before the true false, confidence percentages and other columns. Summary of what the business does on the search is also provided. The right pages are scraped. The scrapes are done in parallel as to maximize speed without hitting rate limits. Errors with the scrapes are handled gracefully, and the scrape doesn't stop abruptly losing all data up to that point. And then I had a bunch of information here, and then I also described the flow as well where necessary. And you can see that there's a couple of other things that I would know because I have tried this in different things that I want to include in this script so that I don't have to go in and make small amendments and errors that you have to actually get to understand that this needs to be done. One of them being this: JavaScript heavy pages are handled such that the scrape does not return nonsensical symbols, because having done this in the past sometimes, it's spun out some absolute ridiculous nonsense that is just not worth looking into. So that is an example of some of the stuff that I've been able to do and some of the ways that I've been able to one-shot a lot of these .md and .python files to be able to use them as agentic workflows. So you can see here, and if we write them all down, the problems are error handling. If you don't have an understanding of how to handle errors or how to handle edge cases, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. Let's say how it's meant to run. I can't spell today. Jeez. All right. How it's meant to run. That's another one. And understanding the order of operations. So let's say you know that you need to scrape something, but the order in which you scrape things is something that you haven't completely solidified. You need to be able to have at least a general understanding of that so that you can guide the AI in and of itself. It's what you get out is what you put in. Shit in, shit out. Genuinely, that's always how it happens. So that's the first thing, not defining success. The second thing, this is what I call not progressing in stages. So I'm going to write this one down and say not progressing in stages. And I'll put this one over here. So what does this mean? Progression in stages is a very basic way to describe not going in full-fledged with one random idea and not double checking your work. So if you don't double check your work, you're falling foul of not progressing in stages. Because if you do one thing and then that one thing compounds and you end up in a situation where this occurs, then the end result is always going to be rubbish. So that's one of them. Another example of not progressing in stages is not checking the YOLO mode thinking. This is the reason why I always limit myself to like the maximum 5 windows whenever I'm doing things with the agent, because I'm reading the thinking and I'm reopening the thinking box every time it's going so that I can understand this is how it's meant to work. If I don't have that, it's all over. A lot of the times because I've done this before, I've gone and I've turned on 3 agent chats, had them do things, and then gone to the toilet and come back. It's fine to do that in planning mode because it will always ask you questions before it proceeds. But there's been times where I've just gone to the toilet and come back and it's just done a bunch of things, and then I go and use it and it doesn't work. And I'm like, why? It's because I wasn't thinking. And I'm not going all the way back up to the top to read the thinking as it was from where it was. It's just a waste of my time. So not checking the YOLO mode thinking is a big thing there as well. Also, if you completely ignore the code, you are shooting yourself in the foot a little bit. You're not going to know it. If you don't know how to code, you're not going to know how to code straight up. Like, that's just not how things work. However, it's going to be way easier for you to understand exactly what's going on if you at least read the comments on the code. So if I'm going to pull up the example again. Here's an example from, let me move my face out of the way. This is an example from the website scraper. This is the actual code. You can see here that there's some things that are actually really easy to read, namely these comments. So you can see here, try sitemap first, try robots.txt, add common URLs, try to get nav links from homepage. Whilst this code is being generated, one of the things that's really important to understand is the fact that when you have things that are being done in the code will show you what's changed or what's been added. If you see certain small changes, which it will pop up sometimes in the window up here whilst it's propagating, you'll see that certain things are changing. For example, one of the ones that I dealt with recently was timeouts. I had an issue where it was stuck on one website for 10 minutes and it slowed everything down. So I said, change the timeout from 10 minutes to 1 minute. I went and checked, and it went from 600 seconds to 90 seconds. I was like, I didn't tell you. I didn't say 90. I said 60. What are you doing? So I ended up having to go in manually and change the 9 to a 6 on the front of 60 seconds. Small things like that. If you don't progress in stages, you don't do any of those things, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. And it's just a lack of care. And if you have a lack of care, then that's probably showing up in more places, and you should think about that and you should do something about it. So that's not progressing in stages. So we have not double checking your work, not checking YOLO mode's thinking, and then completely ignoring the code. Number 3 is not deploying. Not deploying is a big thing. And I'm going to put this here, not deploying. And we are going to describe deployment again so that you can understand exactly what it is. Not deploying is basically having everything running on your computer. And if you have everything running on your computer, you're going to eat up your memory. And if you eat up your memory, or any of the things that are intensive tasks are not just going to slow down and stop and crash and burn and eat up API keys, API credits for different things that you're using, namely OpenRouter or whatever else you're using, and not give you an output. It's also going to take all of the energy. It's going to suck all the energy off of your own computer, which means you won't be able to do anything else. Chrome will crash, Cursor itself will crash, anything else you have open will crash. So if you are doing the stupid thing of running everything on your computer, then you're running into an issue which can be solved by deploying the code off of your computer and doing it somewhere else. Because this is a really big problem, especially when it comes to doing things like working in parallelization. So what's parallelization? If you have something working on the cloud, and this is something that's quite prominent with scrapers, if you have a scraper that you want to use or that you want to work with, or you just have a ton of different jobs. And I'll go back to an example that I was dealing with at the start of 2025 when I had a client that was working in solar. The thing that we ended up coding for him had 2 things baked into it to enable it to do essentially a Google Maps scrape for hundreds of thousands of people at once over the course of a number of hours, where if it was done through normal means through a computer, it would take months. Instead of having one computer to do the thing, 50 computers do the thing. So that's an easy way to do it. There's also going to be certain bits of logic where it comes to fallbacks and a bunch of other things which we're not going to talk about, which actually are namely about not defining success and not progressing in stages. So we won't cover those anyways. But if you can't deploy specifically through things like modal or trigger.dev, then you can't access parallelization. So some of the things that are taking 20 hours to do for some reason, you're just not doing them in 5 minutes like you could be. So that's one of them. And finally, missing business context. Now, this is something that is ubiquitous across everything that you do in AI whatsoever. And it's the reason why Claude, and I think GPT has this now as well, where you can tell it to access memory from previous chats. This is all in an effort to make it way more beneficial for you, because now it has context to the conversations and the questions that you are asking it. Without that context, the answers are not framed in a way that personally work for you and your tastes. Missing business context can manifest in a number of ways. And the principle behind how it manifests is garbage in, garbage out. If you have missing business context, then one of the big problems that will garbage. There we go. One of the big things that will occur, let's say you are I'll take an example from a friend of mine, Lucas Sinnott, who's the head of AI at Client Ascension. He is in the middle of building something that is a way for people to create and generate video sales letters, advertorials, YouTube videos, content for Substack, etc., all through a web app that he's basically helped code. But that information is basically pointless if you don't have an understanding of what the person's business is, what their target market is, the psychographics and the demographics of the target market, the common problems, state 1, state 2, gap selling type information, what the offer is, what the price point of the offer is, who actually needs to buy the offer, what the job titles and the locations of the businesses are that you're going to reach out to for the specific offer. All of these things that can be packaged into a bunch of different .md files. If you don't have them, then you're using agentic workflows to generate creative work, then you're going to put garbage out because there is nothing to go in. You've starved it of context. And this kind of speaks more so to references for creative work. You would never do this if you were inside of a Claude project, for example. You wouldn't have Claude say, write me an email, and not give it any references or any context or any examples. You would always have it give you something that you know that you can use over and over and over again, or that you know that will be beneficial to have, and not having it would be something that would generate bad context. Therefore, having references and making sure that you get good things coming in is how you avoid some of the common pitfalls that occur when it comes to the generation of what you're actually looking for. So to conclude, these are the big things that are going to be issues for you when you go in and you make anything agentic, especially inside of Cursor and inside of Claude Code. If you run into this problem here, where 10% off equals 100% death, or 10% off compounding equals 100% rubbish, then it's likely because you're not progressing in stages, you're not defining what success is, you're not deploying what you need to work with, and you're missing business context. All of those things affect the quality of what you create, and also affects how good of a job or how nice everything is when it comes time to actually building some of the things that you're building in here. I've one-shotted most things in here. Only a couple of things have required a back and forth. For example, the Slack handlers, and which actually isn't still not 100% there yet, and a couple of other things with regards to how the scripts are talking to each other. So once you have that sorted, you're basically good to go. Just take heed of what I've mentioned as far as common pitfalls are, because the knowing what stupid is will enable you to not be stupid just by inversion, Charlie Munger style, and understanding exactly what you don't need, what you should not do, will enable this whole process to be way more beneficial for you. So hope you enjoy it. We'll be talking a lot more about what would be needed in order to make agentic workflows way better. Look at there's going to be links somewhere. Just click on one of the playlists or videos and you'll see some stuff that you might like.